how is what MyFi doing different from, say, what Zerodha is doing or what Groww is doing?
Brokerage is not our focus. We're really targeting this new to novice investor and helping them through that investment journey.
The advisors that MyFi's platform has trained through AI, what is the training process?
I think I should split this up into two parts, right? One is
how much of an important role does SEBI play when it comes to investment?
last week there was a report from SEBI that said 93% of derivatives traders in the retail space are losing money.
Individual investors are losing money trading derivatives. Total loss was more than 1.8 lakh crore rupees.
Unchecked explosion in retail trading of futures and options can create future challenges for the investor sentiment and also for household finances.
All this data reinforce the idea that people need help.
From the beginning, when you guys started in July to up until now, what has the growth been like?
We started with a target of having around 250 crores in linked assets on our platform. Actually, we've ended up hitting almost double that.
What are some of the most common mistakes that new investors or first-time investors make?
Most common mistake that most investors make, not just in India, anywhere in the world, is the idea of making quick money.
SIP or SWP, which is better for a new investor? What if you could have a financial advisor that learns your investment style, is available 24/7 and gives you personalized recommendations? The only catch is it's AI. Would you still trust it with your money? Welcome to Hot Seat by A Media House, where today we talk to Kiran Nambiar, CEO and co-founder of MyFi by TIFIN. Kiran shares very candid thoughts about everything from market corrections to behavioral biases and explains why having an AI financial advisor during market downturns might exactly be what investors need. So, brace yourselves and let's start. Kiran, welcome to AI Media House. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
It's absolutely our pleasure. So, Kiran, if we want to talk about lots of things, your career has been very fascinating up until now. The work that MyFi is doing is very fascinating. But right at the start, let's take a little bit of a trip down memory lane. If you can tell us in short about the way the career started, Bangalore boy, and then you moved to two of the most popular cities in the world. So tell us a little about that.
So I grew up in Bangalore, went to school here largely, was in boarding school for a little bit. But I left after I was 18 to do my undergrad in London, went to Imperial College, after which I worked there for 4 years. I really wanted to move to New York. I think I was kind of done with London at that stage. Spent another 6 years there. My heart was always in India. I wanted to start a business here. That was very clear to me from day one. So it was just a question of timing. I think 2017 is when all the stars aligned and things came together. So yeah, in 2017, I moved back to India. September 11th is when I landed.
Oh, wow, you remember the date.
Yeah, just past midnight. Yeah, so I had a child, I moved countries and started a new business all within about 6 months. We started a company called First Main. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial career, and so we worked with a lot of fintech startups in and around Bangalore. Then started working with TIFIN. TIFIN is a fintech startup based out of the US. They have a number of companies under them, and in a span of like 6 months, sort of middle of 2021 to the end of the year, more than half my company was doing work for them. At which point, Vinay, who's the founder of TIFIN, was like, look, I can't outsource all my tech. Sounds like you're very interested in fintech, so come join us. So that very quickly transpired into an acquisition, and Feb 2022, we were part of TIFIN, and I continued to work with them for the past 2 years on their US products until the end of 23. And then, MyFi happened. That was something I was very keen to do.
Tell us as to how MyFi started, and at what point of time did you think that AI is something which can literally help the world of investing, which is already a world where people are full of doubts about it?
I think I'd have to go back a decade to start this story, right? While I was in New York around 2013 is when I first started thinking about a wealth tech product, right? Those days, India didn't have any digital public infrastructure, any of that, but the problem still existed, right? I had friends, I had family who were basically saying, oh, why wasn't I getting any dividends through 2008, 9 when the credit crisis was going on, right? So there is a lack of basic understanding of what a mutual fund is, how investments work, and all of that. So um, I saw that gap then. Timing didn't work for me. I had other priorities, wanted to get a bit more experience. So kind of parked the idea. And then after I moved back to India, starting First Main and a service business was always a stepping stone towards a product, which is why the TIFIN acquisition made a lot of sense as well. They were in the fintech space, and when I said when the time was right, if the idea makes sense, I'm happy to back you with a product in India as well. So sort of last year, we started researching the space, what gaps there are. And, a lot of the data that was true a decade ago is still true today, where while, you have 100 million unique demat accounts and 40 million unique mutual fund investors, there's nobody to help them, right?
Exactly.
They are investing with very little or no guidance. All the data shows the mistakes that people are making. Last week, there was a report from SEBI that said 93% of derivatives traders in the retail space are losing money, right? Wow. Really, all this data reinforce the idea that people need help and they are willing to invest money, right? So that transition is happening. Traditionally, our parents probably invested in gold, mutual funds, gold and housing, real estate, etc. But that move towards mutual funds and the capital markets in general is happening. And I really think that we need to be a part of that journey and help the masses through it. India has less than 1,000 RIAs or registered investment advisors. And even if you add mutual fund distributors in there, it's still only 120,000 versus the 100 million investors we have.
Absolutely.
Right? So even if we scale up assistance from financial advisors, a digital solution is needed. And that's why tech and AI play such an important role. And all of this has been enabled by India's digital public infrastructure, account aggregator, things like that coming online as well. The solution in this form would not have been possible even 3-4 years ago. Your point on AI, I think really what we're using AI and generative AI for is allowing a user to have a conversation, right? So you can ask it, what is a mutual fund? Can you compare these funds for me? Find me tech funds. And then once we get the question, we're using our own models to really answer the question, right? It's not generative AI coming up with its own responses. So we have got an investments team who are working on this, and we have an RIA license. We're registered with SEBI. So we are a compliant organization that is regulated. So all of these factors, I hope, will go towards building trust with users while we use AI. It's still a journey. I don't think we've solved that, but we really do think that we're aligned with the customer versus the financial institutions.
I want to ask you, how is what MyFi doing different from, say, what Zerodha is doing or what Groww is doing? How would you say that MyFi is differentiated from Zerodha or Groww in which ways?
See, when you look at the fintech space, I'd broadly classify some of the companies you spoke of as brokerages, right? That is where most of their revenue comes from, and that is their focus. So it's a lot of active trading. The users on these platforms as well are, I'd say, not new to novice. They're more professional, still retail, but slightly on the more knowledgeable side. But when it comes to MyFi, we're really targeting this new to novice investor. and helping them through that investment journey. So brokerage is not our focus. It's really, you have an investment portfolio, you come in there, we analyze it for you, and we give you some recommendations, right? So it's a much more simplistic approach. We don't expect you to understand how the Sensex is moving. Our homepage is extremely simple. We just give you an input box. If you don't know what to type in there, there are a couple of starter questions, right? Whereas you go to most of the fintech or wealth tech apps today, they're talking about top movers, top gainers, losses, immediately recommending funds as soon as you land on the page. So really our approach is, let's keep it simple. We don't know who you are. So you can ask the question and craft your own journey. And that's the magic behind using AI and Gen AI products, right? You can craft the journey however you feel fit.
You said if you maybe you are starting off as an investor, you have a small little portfolio, you come to us, can ask questions, and the AI answers. What about a first timer?
So right now we're not focusing on first-time investors at the moment. The only reason being, we want to take a very iterative approach to things. So we want somebody who can come in and connect a portfolio, which is part of your onboarding journey. But we will expand into the new user space as well and help them create a new portfolio and start that journey. But that's not available on the app yet.
I want to ask you, if somebody who's coming new to the platform wants to come in, what like are the plans that are available? If somebody wants to kickstart in a plan which is the least pocket pinch possible,
Yeah.
so are those also options that are all available?
Yeah, so onboarding and using the basic features on the app are free. It's only when you get into seeing the recommendations that you need to pay. It's only $2.99 a month. If you really think about it, it's priced quite aggressively. It's like maybe an expensive coffee in Bangalore
Or anywhere.
or anywhere.
I was just thinking a good burger doesn't come for $2.99.
Yeah, right. So it's actually priced very aggressively at the moment, and we'll iterate through pricing plans and ideas on how to kind of bring in the right kind of user there. But this is our starter plan.
Why would we say that when it comes to youngsters in the country, knowledge like paying your taxes, investing, how to invest, where to invest, this kind of knowledge is very less when we finish school, when we finish college, when we start working. So we need to delve into this, but knowledge of this is extremely less. Why do you think that is, and how can that be corrected?
See, I think this is not only an India problem.
Okay.
It's actually a global problem. It's more acute in India. But I think our education system right now does not talk much about financial education.
True.
Right? And I think that's a very essential part of it. At least some basic education. I know some schools try to get parents and other professionals to come and do sort of lectures on it, but it's not really part of your everyday curriculum. So that's one part that I think should change. Whether it'll happen now or in a decade, I don't know. But also, hopefully, tools like MyFi, and I'm not, saying MyFi will solve the problems of the world, but with tech, with AI, younger children using apps that are more educational will hopefully help them through that journey. And the reason I think it's more important today than it was in our parents' generation or before that is that there is a lot more wealth being created, right? And people don't know what to do with it. So they do what their uncle or their friend or somebody else tells them without necessarily thinking about whether that's a qualified person to give them this advice, right? So as you create more wealth, you need to think about how to save, how to grow it, and all of that. And I think that there's far more wealth being created today, especially in India with the middle class. In fact, there was a Goldman Sachs report recently that said by 2027, there'll be around 100 million Indians earning $10,000 or more, right? And that's not per year.
Per year, okay.
And that's not an insignificant amount, right? So we need to help those people to invest better, to save better, and save for retirement, right? Because once you get used to a certain lifestyle, what people often forget is once you stop earning, that money needs to last you till you die. And most people today are living longer and longer and longer. So I think it's even your retirement phase has become much longer as well. So you need to plan for that as well.
So would we say that teaching young kids in school itself about these two things, majorly investment and taxation, absolute importance?
I think so, but one thing I would add to that is that contextual learning is perhaps important. So introducing it too early could make it boring, but closer to sort of getting to that 18 age is extremely important and
Right.
required. The other reason I'd say it's not picking up is because finance, taxation, very boring topics. So.
How much of an important role does SEBI play when it comes to investment?
I mean, I think SEBI plays an essential role when it comes to investing and regulating this industry, especially in a nascent country like India. When it comes to investing, you absolutely need to have a responsible regulator. And I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago with someone, and in India, both SEBI and RBI have the customer at heart, right? They may bring in regulation that fintechs and other companies feel are draconian, but at the end of the day, they have the customer at heart and they will do anything to sort of safeguard them. So I think that directionally they are doing the right thing, both SEBI and RBI. SEBI does need to play a bigger role in also bringing on more RIAs, which they very recently, actually last night, there was a SEBI meeting as well where they've approved this certain relaxations in RIA and RA regulation requirements. So I think directionally, again, they are moving in the right direction. They have acknowledged the fact that AI plays a role with this. So they are a very supportive regulator. Obviously, the landscape will change because, again, nascent market, things need to evolve. So regulation will evolve, and us as fintechs and other companies in the banking and finance sector just need to be able to evolve with them.
You mentioned SEBI realizing that how important a role AI is playing. I want to ask you again to explain in the most simplest way possible to even an industry outsider, even somebody who hasn't started investing yet, the advisors that MyFi's platform has trained through AI. What is the training process? Do you guys have in-person advisors there? Like, how is the data being collected from and then fed into the system, which is then converting the AI advisors at the platform into able financial advisors?
I think I should split this up into two parts, right? One is the generative AI. So that is the conversational element that you see that people are used to with ChatGPT and all of that, right? So we use generative AI to essentially understand what the person is saying. We then process it, send it to our own models, our financial models that have been developed by our investments team, and then send a response back to the user. So the reason I want to differentiate the financial models and the generative AI is because generative AI is generating the text response and understanding what the user is saying, but the actual recommendation itself, whether it's a search, analyzing a portfolio score, which we have on our system as well, all of that is done using deterministic models, right? So there's no chance of hallucination. The risk with generative AI is that it hallucinates. With our models, it's deterministic. It uses market data from data providers that we have for mutual funds, stocks, etc. We get daily feeds from them. It processes it and then gives a response. So having that distinction is extremely important. And this is an entirely data-driven exercise. So personal biases don't come into it. We may adjust certain parameters. We may change thresholds for scoring and things like that. But that's again based on the data that we see on the platform. It doesn't come down to sort of personal preference, so to speak.
Okay, Kiran, now we want to find out about your investing journey, entrepreneurial journey. We got to know about you. Tell us, when did the journey of investing start and why did you think, okay, now I should invest?
Sure. So actually, my journey started very, very early on because My dad was always a strong believer in this, and he probably made my first mutual fund investment more than 20 years ago now.
So how old are you then?
Like 20.
Okay.
Yeah. 18. I was
All
18.
right.
I was 18. Yeah. So that's when I guess my first investment was made, sort of without my involvement. But I probably started investing myself in earnest around, when I was 25. Um, I wish I'd started earlier, but that's when I really started investing, managing some money. I started like with most people in India with stocks and ETFs and slightly riskier products, which is what I stuck with for a while. But yeah, that's where I started my journey.
Fascinating. Fascinating that you mentioned you wish you had started early. There's this incredible story of Warren Buffett. He did nothing else but invest all his life, right? And there was a point of time where he was the second richest man in the world. And even he used to say that he started investing, if I'm not wrong, at the age of 12 or 13. And in every public speech, he would say that he wish he had started it earlier, like even before 12 or 13. The question I want to ask you is it possible for a person, say in Indian context, is it possible for an Indian to do nothing else but invest and still make a healthy living for themselves?
See, I think that's not a very straightforward answer because, whether you can start investing, I think most people can start investing very early on, because today you can start an SIP for 20 rupees a day, right? Or 250 rupees a month, depending on the platforms you're using. So the barrier to entry is very, very low. I do think that if you start with a very low amount, it's probably not enough for you to sustain your living. So you probably need to have a job for a while. But I think retiring at 40 is very realistic for a lot of people, if depending on your lifestyle and a lot of other factors. I mean, I know family members who have retired at around 40. Retired hasn't stopped a regular day job because they plan their investments well. So it's absolutely possible. It's just a question of what your lifestyle is, how much you can start saving with, and things like that. But barrier to entry to start investing is very low. 250 rupees, probably go lower soon.
Interesting. When one starts to invest, what are some of the key factors that one needs to look into?
See, I think again, it depends on who you are, what your risk appetite is, how old you are. I would say start simple. Mutual funds are the most simple investments to start with. It's again low barrier to entry, and you're not managing your stock investments day to day. You don't need to keep track of the markets and things like that. Index funds, which are getting more and more popular in India, or passive funds as they may be called, is probably the easiest way to start. It'll track an index like the Nifty 50 or something like that, but that's where I would, start your investment journey. Yeah.
What are some of the most common mistakes that new investors or first time investors make? And I'm sure a lot of the customers that come to your platform as well, a lot of them might be first time investors just having a portfolio. So what are the things and aspects that MyFi has in the user interface to help them not make those mistakes in their second round, third round?
Most common mistake that most investors make, especially at a young age, not just in India, anywhere in the world, is the idea of making quick money. I think every higher the reward, higher the risk as well. So I would say keep that in mind when someone's selling you a product or an idea that says I'll double your money in a month, right? So start simple. That's my biggest advice to anybody. Understand what your risk appetite is, and kind of grow from there. As to MyFi specifically, when we launched and right now today, we started with mutual funds, right? You can only connect your mutual fund portfolio, and then we give you recommendations based on that. We will just about to launch stocks also, but idea was to go behind that sensible long-term investor. So MyFi constantly nudges you towards taking a long-term view. So that's really how we kind of tackle this. There are behavioral biases and things like that, which we have not solved yet. We understand there's a problem. So buying and selling actively and things like that. Can we nudge people to think twice, not to do it, but think twice before doing it, right? So there are capabilities that technology gives us today where we can actively track and sort of advise users and sort of make recommendations as they're taking actions to think twice before doing something.
You mentioned SIPs. So if one has to ask you SIP or SWP, which is better? We'll make the context a little easier. Which is better for a new investor?
See, I think they're two very different things. New investor, I would say SIP. You should use an SWP only if you need access to money in frequent intervals. Also, taxation around it is probably not great. So you should talk to a tax advisor before making those decisions as well. Definitely SIP, right? It'll grow your money faster.
Absolutely. There's one thing so the budget was announced. And then suddenly a lot of the youngsters, maybe they don't really fall in the bracket yet, but they're like, at some point of time, we'll fall in the bracket and then we'll have to pay those taxes. So they started asking these questions, which one should from a very early age. So the fact that investments can majorly help you save your tax is something that is a conversation that is finally happening with the youngsters as well. I'm going to again ask you, in the simplest of terms, a 23-year-old who has started working, if you have to explain to them how investments can actually help them save taxing, whether they are a freelance and 10% TDS katta hai, or they do a salary and soon, in some time in the years, when they fall in that bracket, tax will start getting cut.
ELSS funds are the one way to, lock in a certain amount every year. So you should absolutely do that. But beyond that, I would say always take a long-term view, right? You fall into this long-term capital gains bracket versus short-term capital gains. That's where you want to be. So you take money when you need it. If you're really concerned about the markets at a certain point, you book your profits. Don't take more than that, right? So while tax optimization may be an outcome that people are looking for, but really at an early stage, new investor, keep it simple. Invest for the long term. ELSS funds lets you get a tax break on a minimum amount. But beyond that, I would say don't optimize for tax. Think about long term view here and save towards that.
Absolutely. At MyFi, you are dealing with a concept that is very, very sensitive. It's money that we are talking about. How do you get that balance where the AI investor, the AI advisor help comes in hand with the actual personal touch as well? How do you ensure that that bit is there, which can give that sense of satisfaction to a user that yes, the advice that I've gotten is sound advice?
One of the reasons when we started MyFi that we decided to get an RIA license, which is extremely unpopular, by the way, is that it aligns us more with the customer versus the financial institutions, right? So really talking about getting paid by the customer versus getting paid by a mutual fund house for commissions and things like that. So that focus, has been the way we have designed our monetization strategy and things like that. So really communicating that to the user is something that we've been trying to do. Again, I think it is definitely challenging because you are at the end of the day using a phone. But what I would say is that especially in the bracket that we're focusing on now, which is the 25 to 35 new to novice investor, tier 1 and 2 cities, eventually we'll expand, but they're all used to the digital medium, right? Probably never been to a branch before. Checkbooks are completely alien. So I think that that audience is quite comfortable with the digital medium. So I'm not saying we've solved it, but it does make it a little easier for us. And, we're doing everything we can in terms of our communication strategy to ensure that we're building trust with the user and not pushing products on them, so to speak.
From the beginning, when you guys started in July to up until now, what has the growth been like?
Yeah, so the response has been extremely positive. We started with a target of having around 250 crores in linked assets on our platform. But actually, we've ended up hitting almost double that.
Wow.
Right. And that's without adding stocks on the platform. So close to 500 crores already. I think once we add stocks, it could be easily double that, if not more, in the upcoming quarter. So certainly a lot of appetite for a platform like MyFi. And I think the last quarter has been validation for that.
This is something that even the Prime Minister of the country has mentioned time and again. Usage of AI for social good, but in a very, very responsible manner. How does MyFi ensure that the usage is happening in a very, very responsible manner so that, that buyer's decision doesn't go to a user and then that doesn't result to an investment which might occur to a loss for that person?
Yeah, so we have a lot of checks and balances within our tech platform itself before it reaches the user. So any new financial model that's being released, we run it through a rigorous regression test. We check what the results might be. So we're able to do all this analysis in a what-if scenario, and that data then gets analyzed by our investments team before it actually reaches a user. So it's quite a while the actual changes may be quick to do, the testing, analysis, confirmation, all of that sometimes takes weeks. The other thing I would say is not only are we testing the models, we're also kind of verifying everything we say, right? The language we use in an FAQ, the language we use on social media as well. My marketing team sometimes thinks I'm too conservative, but we really, really prioritize, having the right sort of communication versus having something that's clickbait, right? So that sense of responsibility lies throughout the company, not just with the financial models and investments, but also just the app in general, the social media, any content we put out there, right? I think that sets us apart in many ways.
What's your take on scams?
I think it's gotten significantly better with the kind of tech infrastructure and things that we have today with OTP verifications, Aadhaar, and all of that. But funny you should talk about scams. I don't know if it's a decade or more ago, my mom was actually scammed out of almost her entire mutual fund investments.
Oh Lord. How much?
I think it must have been 30, 50 lakhs, something like that.
A decade back?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It was basically her life savings. She's like retired a lot of
What happened?
So her banking RM managed to, at that point, issue what was a debit card against mutual funds.
Okay.
Got it shipped to the bank branch, and over a month withdrew the entire amount. And she obviously did not realize this for a while. Maybe there was an SMS notification. There wasn't, I don't know, but no OTPs were required at that stage. And when one of her assistants who helps her with things looked at her monthly statement, she was like, your entire investment's gone. What's happened? Eventually, they recovered all of it back. We filed a case with the police, cybersecurity, and things like that. We got all the money back.
Thank gosh.
Yeah, but it was certainly a lot more rampant then.
Correct.
Today, I think with OTPs and others, two-factor authentication mechanisms, it's less. But it still happens through social engineering. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I had a friend whose WhatsApp account was hacked because she forwarded an OTP to somebody she knew whose account had also been hacked. So it was kind of this chain of events.
This inception of hacking happened.
Yeah.
And WhatsApp being hacked is crazy because there's so much data there.
OTP. I was at GFF, Global FinTech Fest, end of August. I forget who it was, but he was basically saying, we often think about our Aadhaar, passport, PAN as important ID proofs. But what we often forget is that our phone number is also our identity.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? People switch phone numbers so easily sometimes that it's something to really think about twice before doing, because an OTP goes to that phone number and it can very easily be misused.
Just a few days back ended Cypher, which is India's biggest AI summit. It's conducted by A Media House itself, and it was the 8th season. And there, Kailash Nad of Zerodha said on stage that they don't want to integrate AI because it can create more problems rather than solutions. And the work that MyFi does is directly in contrast, because you have the AI financial experts and AI investment experts who are trying to help people who want to invest, especially the new ones. So, what's your take on that? How does that make it different from what they are doing to what you guys are doing?
See, I think even at the Global FinTech Fest, definitely noticed that the adoption of AI, people were taking a fairly conservative view. But we do very strongly believe that AI is what will enable users to be included in this financial growth that this country is seeing, right? And we're doing that responsibly. MyFi is also backed by TIFIN, which is a US-based fintech, and our entire ecosystem of companies leverages AI in different forms to enable this. We've been very successful in the US with a similar product, and that's a regulated environment as well. In fact, I would say it is harsher regulation than India, and they're not as forgiving as SEBI and other people are around adoption of AI as well. And we've been successful with that. So I think that, as long as it's done responsibly with a team of people who are strong on finance, AI, tech, customer experience, and all of that, which we uniquely have at MyFi and TIFIN, it enables us and gives us the opportunity that perhaps some of the others don't have. So I'm a strong believer in AI. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing MyFi. So we'll see.
Totally. Did you have apprehensions from financial advisors that our jobs will be lost?
Absolutely not, actually.
Okay.
I haven't had that conversation with anyone in India anyway, because, just look at the scale of the problem, right? We have 100 million demat accounts, unique demat accounts. We have 40 million mutual fund investors. And we have less than 1,000 RIAs, and fine, let's add the mutual fund distributors in there. That's still 1,20,000, 1,30,000. So it is just humanly not possible to solve this only with people, right? If anything, we will enable individuals to do this job better, right? We are not looking to replace people in this industry. As the sort of corpus of investments grow, you want to talk to somebody, sure, find a financial advisor who can help you with this face to face, on a call, whatever it might be, right? So we're certainly not looking to replace a human advisor, but the scale of problem in India, at least, requires tech and AI. It's just not possible otherwise.
One advice to a first-time investor.
I think people overthink investing and start investing. How much should I invest? Oh, is this too little? Is it too much? Honestly, I would say start with an amount that you're comfortable losing. You probably won't, but that's really the way to think about it.
Kiran, it was such an honor and a pleasure talking to you. I am very, very sure that our viewers here now have an even better understanding of investing, especially the young ones who have major question marks about it. And if you still have question marks about it that maybe Kiran wasn't able to solve, we have MyFi for that.
Yes, that's right. I hope all of you try it out.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for talking to us. It was a pleasure. Guys, do write in the comments how you found this podcast episode by A Media House. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such exclusive content that you find just here. This is me, your friend Korak. See you in the next podcast.